Next operating condition is establishing the disciplines necessary for scale. Without the discipline, we can't actually accomplish the other conditions necessary for scale. So this one is really, really crucial. This asks the question, can the business scale? We're going to be addressing in this session how you put the disciplines into your organization to identify and track key performance indicators, and how you establish a capacity for continual improvement. We're going to talk about the difference of moving from linear growth to true scale. So if you're familiar with this concept, linear growth is where your growth in revenue and your costs track roughly the same. Hopefully the cost is below the revenue line. But as your revenue grows, your margins aren't really growing. So when we're talking about scale, we're talking about having that cost line will be kind of consistent, but your scale line will start to go way up. And this is how you create enterprise value, is the difference between revenue and costs over time. So when we're talking about scale, we're not just talking about linear growth. And the types of disciplines that we're going to be discussing, and then when we're going to get into team and predictability and cash flow, all of these come out of establishing the right disciplines up front. This also bolsters the organization's resilience and creates that foundation for the growth. So for this session, I am joined by Michael Stus.
Stus.
I don't know why I haven't asked you how to pronounce it before. I've only talked to him half a dozen times.
Why not now? Yeah,
yeah, right?
Stus.
Great timing. And Betsy Craig. So introduce Betsy first. Betsy is a leading expert in food allergies and food safety. She works on menu labeling to help keep people safe, and her goal in life is to save lives, which she literally does. She founded see, this is the other thing I should have asked you, MenuTrinfo.
You rocked it.
Awesome. Okay.
Totally rocked it. Bam.
MenuTrinfo is a food labeling business that provides information and insight on food around allergies, and also provides safety training. She has over 100 major brands for clients, and several hundred colleges and universities use her system. She is at $1 million in revenue now, with 8 full-time people, 6 part-time, and 200 trainers working on contract with her, and she's scaling that business. Michael is the founder and CEO of Canidium. Canidium is a consulting company that works in sales strategy, sales operations, system integration, and performance optimization around your sales efforts. And you do some implementations with SAP and different products.
Yeah, we have 2 major partners. SAP is one. The other is Exactly.
Okay, so these are sales process systems. Canidium has clients in a lot of different industries, and they go everywhere from small and medium business up to the Fortune 100 in the kinds of companies that they have served. They were launched in 2008 by Mike and his team, and they've scaled it from 0 to $15.5 million now, with 125 people in full time. So we have very different businesses here, and we've done that on purpose in handpicking people to talk on this so that we get a broad spectrum. So we're going to talk for, like we did last time, for about 40 minutes, and then open it up to questions from you guys. Also, we'll have a 10-minute break after this, and then we'll dive right into our next session, so be prepared. Okay, so we're asking the question, can the business scale? So the first thing I'd like to understand from you both is, how do you go about enabling scale in your business?
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
So we're essentially a consulting company, technology focused, and our business scales with headcount, basically. So the more people that we have that are qualified to deliver our services, that know our business, know our clients' business, that's how we scale.
Okay.
And we've scaled in a very different way. one of the ways we've scaled is by following legislation, a little bit on the level of what was referred to when we first started as ambulance chasing. So our product menu labeling came out for restaurants, and then restaurants had to develop it. So we became a solution for that primarily, and we're seeing that in the allergy space. So following legislation, consumer-driven demand, food allergies is massive today. It's grown exponentially over the last 10 years. So knowing that I have the solution, and MenuTrinfo in our different channels has the solution to scale up to meet those needs. And now that we've hit that million mark and we're kind of launching to the next stratosphere, how can we scale the sales dollars without scaling people? So we deliver a lot of our training through e-learning. We're doing certified free from kitchens and products. So as I sit here today, hundreds of people can be taking my course while I'm talking with y'all. And when that happens, which is what we're dialed in for, finally, just totally finally, it's so awesome to watch it happen from that standpoint, because I don't need a different human behind each person that's taking a course. I just need to develop it properly, and we all did.
So let's talk first about disciplines that you've established for sales and customer retention, because if we don't have that, then we don't have a business. We've got to both get them in the door and then keep them in the door, hopefully. So talk about some of the process issues that you ran into that were limiting scale in the business and how you dealt with that.
So I'll start first, if that's okay with you, Mike?
Sure.
All right, cool. So each one of our nutrition clients had to have a contract and an understanding between us and the client. And our customers are people you see driving up and down College, the billboards and the restaurants you eat in every day. And we had to come up with a standardized template that we could multiply over and over and over. And then we did something which is just music to every entrepreneur's ears. It's called recurring revenue. Mm-hmm. And without those double R's, man, it's just a game changer to sign people up a certain way and get them to pay us monthly recurring revenue. And then finally, I have a wicked passion for believing that every client is now part of my family. And they don't leave us. We've had a couple go out to business. We've had one or two that we invited to the door and said bye. But people they have not walked away, which just really speaks to the team.
Occasionally you have to do that with family too.
Yeah, family time out.
How about you?
Yeah, so in a similar way, we have standard contracts and templates, and that really helps set the stage for a successful engagement with customers. And we really stress, I saw an email, it was funny, I saw an email today about this internally, that whenever you engage with a new prospect, you need to go back to the template versus resisting the urge to go to a completed contract and use that as the template, because a lot of times that includes negotiations and some giving that you had to do to sign that customer. So stressing always going back to the template for those standardized contracts. And then we have at least one other process I think that's actually I can think of two. Couple other processes that we make sure to use with every single customer. And the first of which is we have a sales to delivery handoff meeting. So the sales team may be working with a customer for weeks or months to close a deal, and they're gathering a lot of information and learning a lot about the customer. And before we had this formal process of a handoff from sales to delivery, a lot of the first days of an engagement required the customer to rehash a lot of information that they've already given to the sales team. So formalizing that process allows us to leverage the information that's given to the sales team during the sales process, and additionally doesn't annoy the customer by having them have to repeat a bunch of stuff. They're like, hey, didn't I tell Johnny on the sales team about this? And so that's been instrumental. And another one is that we have a customer success team that's numbers 2 and is growing. But we engage those folks with our customers very early in the process, in the project. Even sometimes before the sale actually closes, they get to know the customers, and versus sometimes companies' customer success programs get involved in the project or the process later on in the engagement. But it only helps, it makes it more efficient and better when it happens earlier, like we're doing it now.
Yeah, I mean, we've run into problems with sales teams not communicating, and it can really damage the customer relationship at its most fragile state.
Right. Before you've had a chance to prove yourself. Yeah.
Right. And as a customer, it drives me nuts when I have to say the same thing 3 or 4 times. It's like, calling the phone company.
Yeah, or Comcast.
Right, yeah. So, talk about even in talent and some of the things that you guys have run into where you saw situations that were limiting your scale and you needed to deploy disciplines. What kind of problems were you seeing in your talent pool, and then how did you address it?
Excuse me, I'll go first. So in the early days of our business, we didn't have much infrastructure at all. So when we would sell a deal, we would do a lot of just-in-time hiring or hire contractors, basically folks with experience in the industry. And that was difficult because although they generally had the skills to do the work that we were selling, they didn't necessarily fit the culture that would help us scale, the culture of sharing your knowledge, not only learning quickly, but be willing to teach others about the technology and stuff. So what we did to remedy that, also those people that are very experienced in industry tend to be more expensive as well. Mm-hmm. So margin erosion happens in that model or that scenario. Mm-hmm. So what we did to combat that was to create an internal education program where we started, so we have a whole series of classes that teach the technologies that we work with. And so rather than hiring folks that already know the technical skills that we need, we hire people that are earlier in their career, thus a little bit less expensive, but also better culture fit for our company. And we look for the core aptitude and the core abilities in the recruiting process rather than the finished skill sets that those more expensive, not so great culture fit wise folks have. And then we bring them in, and 30 to 60 days later, we have them trained up and ready to go out, start billing with our clients.
Yeah, you can train for skills, but you can't train for temperament.
Right. Yeah, and some of these contractors that have been doing this for, doing the stuff that we do in our business for years are, sometimes honestly arrogant and very expensive, and they're away in a pinch to get away with some staffing difficulties, but long-term scale and culture building, not so much.
Yeah, and you probably have both run into sometimes like somebody, well, that's not the way we did it at my last company.
Right.
And so having somebody a little less experienced doesn't come with that baggage.
Yeah.
Betsy, how about you?
I've only had that attitude in salespeople. Honest to God.
Oh, yeah.
So I was given a piece of advice that I didn't listen to until I got dragged by the trailer hitch, and now I listen to it very well. And that is, when you know you need to fire somebody, do it immediately. Because waiting takes everything and everybody down with them. And I openly talk about a year ago just being at this space where I was like, holy cow, can we keep going on? Because our culture was shifting, because I had somebody undermining me and mentoring a couple people in the office against me. And I understand I'm a hot-headed Italian and I get all that, but it was not very cool or fair. And, the business would be great if we never had to have anybody work for us, is how I felt at that time. And what I know now is I'm so incredibly grateful for the people that had the core, the belief, the passion to do what we do, because nobody really has done what we do. We just opened a channel 2 years ago to certify products as free from the big 8 allergens or gluten-free or kitchens, and we have amazing colleges that do this. There's nobody that can come to us with that skill set. So we are starting ground up an industry and a space in the industry. So we had to find people who care. And they have to care more about protecting lives and health than they care about just about anything else on the job, including how expensive they can be. You know, we're a small business that gives the best health care. We match Hewlett-Packard's health care at our small company for a small number of people. We're either going to back it with put our tush where our mouth is and back it. I know it's being recorded, so I'm being good. Or we're not. We just started a 401k this year. I mean, that's how I'm getting talent and keeping talent. We're going to CSU, Food Science Division and Nutrition, and getting people that want to come intern with us. And we're lucky that we've had a couple people who are in the room today who stuck with us through thick and thin. From my basement when we became empty nesters, my husband and I, to today in our second office in the middle of Old Town. You know, somebody say, okay, I want to work for you for $8 an hour. My parents will supplement for us. And she's now our COO. Like, that's what Fort Collins can do, and that's what CSU can do. So I got to get that plug in for CSU, because my goodness, we are so lucky to have that resource here.
I'll second that.
Yeah, that's cool.
We have 25 plus, maybe 30 CSU grads.
Wow. I want to talk about that internship program, but before we go there, Betsy, you told me a story when we were doing our prep call about a problem with not having specific procedures and disciplines in place and operating the COO in place when you were traveling, and how things were starting to fall apart. Can you talk about that? Tell the story and how you realized what the problem was and what you did about it.
So I travel a great deal and do a lot of public speaking about food allergies, food safety. I'm all over the country, and I'm grateful to do that with a good team behind. What I didn't know was I didn't have a loyal team behind. And I had people who cared more about their own future than caring about the future of the company. And that was like permeating in different areas. I referred to somebody mentoring 2 gals, and I didn't know what was going on in the office until I really couldn't not see. One of the challenges, forgive me, it's going to take like a minute to go into here, but so I have an autoimmune disease that was supposed to kill me. It didn't kill me. 2 years ago, I went in for stem cell. I checked out of my business almost completely to do head-to-toe stem cell transplant. I still have scleroderma, but it doesn't affect me ever anymore. I almost forget I even have it. But I had to literally check out of my business for over 3 months, full-time over 3 months, and trust who I left behind. While I trusted those folks, some weren't worthy of that trust. And I discovered it by hearing about things and just kind of sneaking around. And I'm kind of a snoopy person. So I discovered what was going on. And literally, I fired somebody 6 months too late. And I don't know if I regret it, because it was a heck of a lesson. It broke my heart. But the bottom line is that year we won an award for doing double our volume. And we won one of those Mercury 100 awards. So we won that award while I wasn't even there. Those ladies sitting back there, that's who was there. That's who kept that thing going. So I'm grateful that we had enough in place. And then I put some different stopgaps along the way. And we developed a leadership team. I promoted 2 people, one to COO, one to CFO, put them completely in charge, and they run the day-to-day business now.
Mike, how have you dealt with some of these things? Because you have different problems, but similar with a larger scale.
So, yeah, I'm trying to.
Sorry.
We haven't had. I mean, we've had some loyalty issues, but that was mostly before we made our shift in our hiring model to, finding more the raw aptitude and the culture fit versus the experienced grizzly veterans out there that don't fit the culture and the environment that we have. We also back to CSU. We also established the internship program where I thought it would be nice to have an operations intern help out with back office tasks that we have to have done weekly, monthly, quarterly, all of those things. And so we started that program, and then one semester I couldn't decide between two interns, so we just hired them both. And then now we've got a half dozen that are with us that rotate that are with us all the time, and it's most of them turn into, I would say 75% plus turn into full-time employees. And that's a great way to ensure culture fit, loyalty, and it's super rewarding. Honestly, I went into this business initially seeking, financial rewards, but so much more rewarding than that is the job creation that we're doing. And the high quality jobs that you were talking about earlier, where we're hiring folks out of school and getting them on track to 6-figure salaries and that kind of thing. So another milestone that I have to mention is one of our interns from a couple years ago became a practice lead in our company. So that's upper level management inside the company, and it was awesome to see. So we hire for I keep harping back on that, but it's so important. Hire for the culture, raw aptitude, and mold them into what you want them to be, and give them stretch goals, stretch positions, and you'll be surprised by what they can do.
Cool. Kristen, I may start coughing, so you might have to mute me. So just be prepared for that.
She's all, oops,
Sorry, guys.
like that.
A little warning.
That would be the example.
She's all choked up about this topic.
I am. Thank you. Okay. I'll signal you if I'm going to have to do that again. Thank you. Okay, so, we talk a lot about the need for cross-training and processes, and we use the metaphor, well, what if a key person gets hit by a truck? And we joke about that, but I actually had that happen. My business partner literally, well, he was drunk, which was another problem about choosing a business partner, but we won't go into that. But he was riding a moped and got hit by a truck and knocked down a cliff, and he survived it. But now what do? So how do you guys prevent the key person hit by a truck scenario that you hope never happens?
Yeah, we try to have no single point of failure with business essential tasks. So anybody that's doing something that is critical to the business needs to have that process documented. And not only does that documentation need to exist, it needs to have been tested as well. And what I mean by testing documentation is that basically you take these standard operating procedures or these job descriptions and descriptions on how to accomplish tasks, hand them to somebody that's never done it before, and have them go through and make sure that they can accomplish everything. Because a lot of times what happens is if you're very familiar with a task and you document how to do it, you're leaving out key essentials, key details. But you don't know that you are because you know it so well. So the testing part of it is essential. Back to our internship program, a lot of times, it's not feasible for a company our size or small or even bigger to have a redundant person, another person that can step in and do bookkeeping, for example, or some other essential task in the organization. So we've been able to fill that gap a lot of times with when it's not a complete, when we don't have the budget for a complete new full-time hire. A lot of times we can accomplish that with a very skilled, properly selected intern.
So I tend to do it more with the cross-training of our folks because we're in different divisions, and some divisions some of the channels are busier at certain times of year versus others. So the nutrition folks know how to help somebody get into an Allertrain class versus know how to help somebody who's curious about certification. So there's a lot of cross-training between those different channels. Because I did have to step out for 3 months, 100%, except for on the phone from the hospital room. And people had to step in. And so it made us get very efficient on what if somebody gets hit by a bus, what if Betsy needs a timeout? And that caused us to be more aware of who could step in and do what. I wrote down that strong staff. So everybody that's left and everybody that's been with us now since this time last year they're just warrior women mainly. We have a couple guys, we let them play, but mainly it's women, and they're warrior women. I mean, strong, hardy women that can do pretty much any task that's in front of them. And I heard this SOP thing, I forget, I think we were at dinner with a couple, and this is this man's job, was developing standard operating procedures just so people can cross-train. I was like, that's brilliant. And by that Monday, we had an Excel spreadsheet, and every department was writing them out. I was like, it doesn't have to be horribly complicated, but literally having notebooks of what the SOPs are for each of the channels has been super helpful.
But I think, to Mike's point, making sure that you test them is really, really smart.
So she just wrote that down. We're going to be doing that. We will be testing.
Awesome. So I would encourage everybody to have that scenario of what if you end up in the hospital? What if your key partner or your number one salesperson or your number one developer or whatever lands in the hospital? You have to have a plan for that because you can't let your business, be sunk just because of that one situation.
There's an ego aspect to it too. I mean, nobody's essential, and that needs to be a guideline for the company. And if you think that you're essential, then you might not be a culture fit for us. There needs to be an ego adjustment. And, what's the best way to pursue a different opportunity in our organization? It's to make sure that someone else knows how to do what you're doing currently, and it's well documented, and then you can move into something that might be more exciting to you.
We didn't prep for this, so I'm going to throw a
Bring it.
curveball at you. But one of the problems that I've seen is in client relationships. If a specific client's situation is the role of a specific account manager or a customer relationship manager, and then that person is out, how do you handle documenting that kind of thing so somebody else can pick up for that client?
We have that in nutrition all the time. So whether they're out for maternity leave or they're out because after 5 years they want to go be a nutrition for fitness person, trying to change over the personality can be the challenge, but the principle of what we do stays the same. So we call it principles before personality. So the principle of nutrition clients, what we do, can transfer person to person to person. The other thing is every client has more than one touch point. So we're nimble enough that one person might be their menu manager and their nutrition person, but there's always a second. We have second eyes on everything, and there's always a second backup. So they never feel abandoned.
And people can go on vacation.
They can and have fun.
Yeah, we utilize that team approach too. I mentioned the customer success, getting engaged early. We also have an executive sponsor for every one of our projects. So that person, a lot of times, like if we have a personality conflict or vacation and that comes up and our project manager needs to be swapped out or removed or go on vacation and come back, a lot of times the exec sponsor can step into that role or someone else on the team can as well. But a lot of documentation helps with that too, but the team approach is very important.
I also find that on the sales process, making sure that the salespeople are documenting every meeting and sharing that with the rest of the team so that you don't lose a deal because somebody gets sick or goes on vacation and the client needs to talk. But that's been very helpful. It also helps to communicate to the staff what's going on with that client when you win the deal.
Well, yeah, little things like out of office messages on your email.
Oh, yeah.
And designating backups when you go out. You can't go on vacation if you don't have a backup lined up.
Yeah, which is a good way to motivate people to get their backups lined up. So I know that, Mike, you have a very specific process for hiring. And when you're hiring, this is a big problem for a lot of small businesses, is you bring in a new hire, but they don't know what their job is when they start. And so as a consequence, you'll see in some companies, it might take 6 months to a year before a new hire is completely productive. That's a huge problem, and it's going to mess with your profitability, and it's going to make it difficult to scale. So Mike, I know you have developed some very specific procedures for onboarding. Can you talk about that?
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we, part of that training program that I mentioned earlier is before we get our technical consultants to be engaged in technology specific training, there's onboarding type training that includes, the history of the company, how our business works, what does utilization mean, all of the other terminology that's prevalent in our business. They learn that as a general onboarding class. Also, just some simple things like being prepared when, a lot of people have experienced this where you get hired and you're super excited about a job, and then you show up there, especially with smaller companies. You show up there the first day and it seems like it's a surprise for everyone. You're like what the heck? There goes all my excitement and all the excitement about having this job, because they're like, hey, they didn't even expect me today. So we have very clear steps defined to make sure that doesn't happen. And when somebody shows up on their first day, or if they're remote, they've already had a laptop delivered to them. They've already, have their parking pass. They already have their email set up. They already have their training curriculum established. All of those things that can propagate that good feeling that came with the offer presentation. And it's so easy to lose that, and it's hard to get it back. So you might as well just keep it going from the offer process.
Start strong.
Yeah.
How about you, Betsy?
So you don't get a second chance at a first impression. Mm-hmm. And somebody joining our company is like joining our family. I keep referring to that. And a new person starting walks into a place they're supposed to be sitting with documentation there, a checklist, a folder, stuff with their name, pens. I mean, just like stuff so they feel welcome.
Yeah, the swag, t-shirts, and
I don't give a lot of that stuff out, as you can imagine. We used to, no. But just really, we want them to feel comfortable. We always make a little name tag for the back of their monitor with something cute we learned about them. If it's somebody who's into horses, they'll have a horse next to it. Just that personal touch. So even though we're small, with the employee handbook sitting there, all of that. So stuff is spelled out right away from day one. They need to know where the restroom is. They need to know where to hang their coat. That's really important part of our culture to onboard. And it's really nice that lately we haven't had to do that much because the culture is getting firm again. And where we were, startup, I don't know. 1 year in a startup is like dog years. It's 7 is what it is. So, it's just a strong and hardy path, but it's nice to have it all dialed in so folks can feel real welcome.
Yeah, I could tack on a couple of things too. In addition to the onboarding process, we a couple of years ago made a big effort to clearly define our career tracks. And if somebody starts out at an analyst level, how do they get to that director level, and what are the responsibilities for each step along the way? And it just helps with a lot of folks are a little bit hesitant working for a company our size, 125 people, is pretty small. But when they see that kind of structure in place, it does a lot to alleviate those fears about instability or any other stories that they're telling themselves about smaller companies. So
Betsy and I are looking at each other going, this seems pretty big to me.
And we've even added that, like the bulk of our company are consultants that actually deliver the projects that we work on. So the career tracks for those roles were developed first. But then our accounting team and our HR team, they're like, well, what about us? And there's a little bit of an attitude sometimes in our company. Well, you guys aren't revenue generating your overhead, but they're essential to the business as well. And they need a career track. They need to know how they can grow and expand and get better opportunities in the company. Otherwise, they'll find them somewhere else.
True, very true. So let's talk about performance goals and making the team effective and making sure that you're actually hitting the goals for the company. I know that you're both tracking both individual and team goals. Talk about what you're tracking and how you track that.
So we're tracking straight out sales numbers in each of our channels. We're also tracking the recurring revenue and then how many are retained year over year. How many people leave us? That's how I can tell you it's less than 1% of folks that walk away from us. And it just keeps growing, which is fabulous. The individual employees are held to twice a year reviews and setting goals when they start with us, whatever their channel they're in and where they want to head with their profession as we move forward. And then we try to, and I say try because I don't think it's been as consistent as I would wish, but it's gotten better over the last year for sure. Try to sit down and go through where did we want you to be? Did we want you to be a person going out and talking about the company? Or are you just selling for the company? Or are you just doing nutrition for the company? What piece of it? And then how can we measure that? Have you been asked to speak? Have you been asked to come back and speak? What do your customers say about you and the interactions with you? So it's money, but it's also retention of clients and what they're thinking of you.
Yeah, so things that we track, our delivery team, definitely the number one KPI is just utilization. So what that means in a services company is billable hours, the number of billable hours over available hours. And the higher that is, generally the higher that ratio is, the better we do as a business. But just like with any KPI, a lot of times the primary KPI needs to be supported by some secondary KPIs where, like, telling a salesperson, hey, we need more deals. If they don't have the skills or they don't have the guidelines on the way to get there, they may not get there. So like that with utilization, we also track the number of skills. Like if we're working with 3 or 4 different technologies, if one of our consultants, one of the measures that we use for our consultants is how many of these technologies are they capable of delivering. So, and that secondary KPI, if it's 2 out of 4, it's better than 1 out of 4, but being able to deliver all 4 of the technologies would be better. So that KPI sort of supports the primary KPI of utilization because it's a lot easier to staff a consultant if they're multi-tool enabled, basically. So if we have a project with technology 1 and they're only skilled on technology 2, that is a staffing problem.
Right.
So the secondary KPIs, like for sales, obviously number of deals closed and revenue are primary KPIs. Number of meetings with qualified prospects might be a secondary KPI, or number of proposals that you're presenting to the prospect base.
I have a question for you guys. How many of you have a defined sales process and track the lead flow through the process so that you know what's likely to close? Okay, a few of you, good. If you didn't raise your hand, write that down. Okay, that should be a key performance indicator, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that because I know you guys do some of these sales process implementations. What types of things they might be tracking?
Well, I mean, I just mentioned a couple of them, proposals generated, meetings with qualified prospects. These are B2B measures for the most part, unless you're selling huge B2C items that have longer sales cycles. But those kinds of things, close rate is a good measure as well. Just dollars of deals added to the pipeline. If you think about your sales funnel as a funnel, generally deals come in at the top, but tracking the dollars of deals that you have at the various levels in the pipeline and over time too, and it could help a lot with forecasting as well, because if you've got a larger amount of money closer to the bottom of the funnel, you better get ready to deliver more work.
Also, if you don't have much money at the top of the funnel, you better be backfilling.
Do those lead generation things, marketing, conferences, all of those.
Right. So that's a key factor for the fourth session that we're going to have on predictability. And remember, Charles was talking about how predictability is that fulcrum that creates the enterprise value that allows you to know whether your business is going to hit its targets in this quarter. So if you're not tracking this data and not having the discipline to keep track of it, then you don't have those KPIs to look at in order to predict your business.
Yeah, to that point, if I could add on, our head salesperson needed a lot of coaching in this area because he liked to present on quarterly updates, numbers standing alone, basically, versus numbers in the context of a history. If we've got X number of dollars in a certain stage of the pipeline, that doesn't really mean much to anyone unless you're looking at that data all the time or you have the context of the history of that number.
Right. How much flow are you seeing? How much velocity are you getting in the pipeline? What are you guys tracking from the pipeline perspective?
So we have 5 different stages of the sales process from when they first enter the top of the pipeline to when we do close them. And I think that the biggest thing we track is how many are hitting the website, I just set up that Ruby chat, so how many are coming through Ruby chat now, where the clients are coming from. We have not had a salesperson officially in our company in almost a year since I fired her. And, I keep saying that. I just feel I'll be done soon with saying that.
That was a bad apple.
You'll work that out eventually.
But literally, we've been going. It's all referral business right now, and it's still in the pipe, and we're still on target, and it's just rocking and rolling. So where is it coming from? Where in the pipe is it? One of the things that I'm working on, just what I'm taking away from today, as well as something that I've been working on, is how many days to close from when they first reach out and call us to when we can cash the check, because King Soopers is nice, but they actually want money at the cash register, not my smile. And so that's one of the big, indicators we're seeing, how much cash flow, cash on hand, which I know you have a great session coming up later on some of that as well.
Yeah, we'll be talking about cash flow management, which is critical.
Huge.
Okay, so in my businesses, I've always believed in a lot of transparency. Some of my clients are not nearly as transparent with their employees. I'd like to let you guys talk about how transparent you are with hitting financial goals and what you're sharing with employees and how you keep them focused on the mission and the vision by sharing.
So I'm sure you can tell I'm a very closed off person. I share nothing, right? So we're extremely transparent. I keep referring to my husband, who comes from Hewlett Packard, and he believes in the old HP way, which includes profit sharing. So if the company does well, everybody feels it. And we started profit sharing as soon as we started making a profit. And we do quarterly profit sharing based on the production of the company. Sometimes it's a Starbucks gift card and a hug. And sometimes it's four figures. For somebody that's making 30 grand a year, it's a heck of a deal. And we are fully transparent with folks, whether it's P&L, whether it's, how things are going, whether we're experiencing highs or lows as a company, we do it all together. We set our goals, and if we don't reach them, we really do a deep dive as to why and do a postmortem as to what happened. And then if we meet them, we share it with everybody. I mean, I really would put our company and what we're doing for our employees up against anybody in this town for what folks get that work for us. I really feel proud of it, and it's because I want to take care of the people that take care of us. So transparency is the only way for me to be.
Yeah, we have a very similar mentality as far as transparency goes. We do quarterly all company updates, and we go through the P&L on those calls, and we have profit-based bonus plans. So it makes that message sometimes easier to deliver. It's like, hey, people don't ask why are we not getting a bonus this quarter? And it's pretty apparent when you look at a P&L, and there's not enough at the bottom line to warrant a bonus. So we're very transparent. We're trying to broaden that across the organization too, and have gotten better about that with HR, like with salaries. We don't disclose individual people's pay plans, but we do publish bands for our different levels or different roles and titles, and so people know what it means when they get promoted from consultant to senior consultant as far as financial benefits.
So I work with a lot of clients in my business. I consult with companies in their go-to-market strategy. And one of the problems that I find is lack of transparency, where the employees on the sales and marketing teams are trying to figure out what they're going to do, but the goals aren't communicated to them. And so they don't know what targets they're supposed to hit. And then sometimes the numbers aren't communicated to them, so they don't know if they're succeeding or failing at what they're trying to accomplish. They know what business is being brought in, but they don't necessarily know whether the business is profitable. I really am a strong proponent of the more you can disclose to your team, the more on board they can get with helping accomplish the mission. I would imagine, given how you guys are operating, that you would agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you've got to have strong accounting practices too. Yeah. Accrual-based accounting, like we do some projects.
Accrual-based accounting.
Yeah. So if you're doing accounting based on cash basis, you really have no basis to compare one period with another period as far as how 1 month versus another month as far as how you're performing. And accrual-based accounting allows you to do that with good revenue recognition and expense recognition processes too. So when we do fixed price projects, sometimes on the signature of the deal, we get 25% of the fees, but we're not booking those fees as recognized revenue until we've actually done the 25% of that project associated with that. So that prevents lumpiness in your accounting and allows you to compare and understand fully how you're doing one month versus another month.
Keeping your financial house in order is important. We're going to talk about that more in the capital and cash flow, but I know that also you had to identify the right person to do the books. And so let's let that be the last question before we let it open up to the audience. Talk about that, making sure that you really get the right person managing that side of the business.
So for me, I've had a couple different people come in and do QuickBooks for me. I taught myself QuickBooks so I could do my own books, and I did that for a bunch of years. Thank God we stayed alive through all of that. But recently, in the last year or so, I got a really big schooling on the difference between net profit and gross profit and what percentage, because it matters, go figure, matters, and what percentage should be spent towards overhead, towards, development, R&D versus sales versus, and there's like, people have done this study and there's a certain percentage we're supposed to, and we're doing it now. I didn't know it, but we put it in place. And to have somebody that I trust running those numbers and that, I don't have any secrets from has been invaluable this last year. Like I said, a year ago, things are really rough this time a year ago. And today it's completely 180%, 180 degrees different from where we were 12 months ago today as a result of learning gross profit margin and as a result of learning net sweep, but that's not what's going to keep the doors open, and how to do a line of credit without my husband's signature, thank you very much, and how to manage cash flow in the proper way and not give away the store. Because I tend to want to give everybody that works for us everything, like if they could have my house at some point, but that's not going to grow the business long term. So I've had to rein myself in and know I'm not all that too. Thanks.
I agree with all those points. We when we first started out, one of my co-founders, he's long gone now, but one of the co-founders' spouses actually did our books, and that was kind of a mistake because she wasn't really qualified. It was, we were skimping in an area where we probably shouldn't have been, and when we found mistakes, oddly enough, they were generally in favor of this other guy versus the other two founders. So we fixed that problem, and we've been able to maintain great accounting talent ever since, and it's very important. And I've learned a lot, like Betsy. I've learned a lot too about how to do it. At least understand the concepts of revenue recognition and all of that.
You better understand the books. Yeah, that's no excuses for
cash flow. Cash flow is king too.
King.
Yes. All right, it's your turn. What questions do you have?
Just since you mentioned it, I understand the basic overall, like gross, net, all that stuff. You said something about a study breaking down like where you should be. Do you have the details of that?
I do not, but Sarah back there does. But we can give you what we were told for ours. But I do know that there's standard accounting practices. We've changed CPAs 3 times to get a CPA that could talk in a language that this PTA mom could listen. And because I don't come with a big business degree. So they broke it down and said, okay, 12% of your revenue should be here and 15 should be here. And you should end up with gross profit of 15 to 20. Is that what we're going for, girl? Yep, 15 to 20%.
Those percentages will vary by industry for sure.
Significantly. Significantly.
You just mentioned that there's some significant studies, and I was like, okay, I want to look at these papers.
I think
there's a wealth of information, I think,
Tons.
based on industry. But
Okay, here's a wealth of information now.
Yeah.
One of the takeaways is to find a CPA who will actually advise you. I've had lots of CPAs who just do my taxes, and I'm like, wait, I didn't hire you to just do my taxes. I need financial guidance. So you have to hunt for them. There's not, that it doesn't seem to be commonplace.
Well, I would refer you to mine because he takes my hand and walks me through it, and I do not feel stupid. And he'll explain it 4 different ways till I get it. And I need that because I'm the one who's accountable for it at the end of the day, as you are. And there is that consultative help is invaluable in that space. The first person I hired was a lawyer. Second person was a CPA.
We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
So as you're scaling up, start off small, you got a lot of hats on a lot of people. Other than just duplicating people, how do you decide when to split the hats up into 2 different people? How do you rationalize quantify that?
That's a really good question. I tend to be super conservative. Before I mentioned the interns earlier, before we go hire another full-time person, I want to see someone really stretch. Maybe get an intern first before. But it's a really difficult thing to determine the exact time. But my guideline or advice is just be conservative. Generally people can do the current state for a little bit longer and that's better than having an abundance of overhead in scenarios versus hiring maybe a month or two late.
I just want to interject one more thing. I think we owe a round of applause to Candace for all that she's done. She's been amazing before she breaks this up. Great job.
Thank you.
Fabulous.